I always look at functioning, right? Social, emotional, academic, and communication functioning. And if functioning is affected and they're not able to engage with peers, they're not able to share their insight, it affects their ability to learn. They should have an evaluation for an IEP. At 504 is a step down, as I call it, in the sense it's still accommodations, interventions, but the learning is not as much affected, so that they don't need more of the specialized education. So it's definitely different in the US, and how you label these children. And a lot of schools will do what we call IEEs, independent educational evals, where private centers will do the evals for them because they know that it's difficult. And I think one of the most important things, and you probably see this in schools a lot, is that with goodwill, with good intent, there's a lot of school professionals and treatment professionals who still see SM as children who just don't speak. And so the focus becomes so much on getting them to speak, and their educational plan is a plan to get them to be brave to talk when they're not ready yet. Some children we talk about talking all the time, and ultimately that is the goal. But we have to be very cognizant of where this child is in his or her journey to what we're able to work on. And if we work too quickly on speaking, we're going to shut them down and avoid. But if we aren't doing enough, we're going to enable their lack of social communication. So it's a balancing act. And that's where working with somebody and understanding, where they're at and what you can say and how you can support the child and student is so important. So that misunderstanding of what this is, and I always go back to, I hate the name SM. I think it's lousy. It implies these kids are just about not talking, and that is just so not true. There's so much more to who they are. I know we're almost out of time, but I imagine you use a lot of things like visuals, right, to support them. That's a big thing that we use, right, because it also helps to minimize the need to think and process and reproducible tasks over and over, so they build that confidence. So how do you use visuals from a speech and language pathologist standpoint with what you do?
So very much exactly as you described. So I give a routine so they know exactly where they are, what to expect, and what we're going to be doing or what they're going to be doing in schools. And it takes the pressure from, sharing or, thinking, because thinking is a big process. So I think you're absolutely right. Is that focus on the sounds? But even when we assess children for language delay or those specific SLPs that deal with children with ASD, we know that is way more than using the words. I also use games a lot, and depending on the age of the children, what they like. Yeah, is their way of feeling okay about it, being silly, funny faces. For emotion cards, they are my faces. And they laugh at me, allow that to happen. Or sometimes they can't even do that because they find, oh my God, that she will be mad if I laugh at her. So there is that element as well. But it's really about not, translating. I would have, for example, visual routines in many languages if the child obviously can also read. I want the child to feel seen. That's the most important thing. And another thing is not the just me and the child. Now it doesn't really happen. It's about a small group or something that they feel comfortable with. So it's about them exploring, even where they are at, where do we sit? Those things are really, really important because in at the beginning of my career, we used to be right in the middle of the hallway between many classes. I mean, and people say, well, nobody's listening to you. Yeah, but it was reverberating. It was a huge space. So even just a simple decision of where do I use my visuals? Like, am I in a space that the child feels safe or nobody can see the child just now? That's also as important as everything that I have in my bag. So, but definitely creating the connection in play is one of the biggest things.
Oh, yeah, I love it. And then integrating the strategies within that, right? Creating what games to play with strategies. Like a real big one for me, and I use this a lot with bilingual children that can read, is the kind of the reading of the words is easier than putting their thoughts together to say it. So we do a lot of board games with questions and answers because they're able to speak that language so much easier than just coming up with their thoughts. So that, like, the write, the read, the script approach, asking, I always say this, and it's one of my favorite questions to ask. I ask it all the time, and I look forward to seeing people's hands go up and trying to guess. I'll say to them, I'm going to say this to you because the answer to this is, what are the chances that I can get a child who is verbally responsive, even a few words, doesn't even have to be regular volume, to become initiative within 10 seconds? And the answer is 100%. Because if they can respond, and let's say they can read or sight read, they can read a question. So, do you like dogs? If they're able to answer, they're not afraid. They're not afraid to speak in that moment. And so parents are always amazed. They're like, how did you get him to ask that question? Well, we didn't just start with go up, ask random thought-provoking questions. It was a very predictable questions, and it was in the interest that they had. So whether it's animals or Harry Potter or something like that. And it's such an amazing eye-opener for teachers too. And so for some of our bilingual children, and just in general, I use this approach. That kind of script approach is so important with question answers. Then they tend to transition easier into more natural language a lot of times as they're learning it.
It's focusing on where they're at and how.
Yes, meeting them where they're at. Not behind, not in front, where they're at. And it's amazing when that happens, the trust you build with these kids, right? They open up more to you. They share more to you. Because if you're too far ahead, they avoid and they shut down. If you're too far behind, they just shadow and they don't learn the skills, and it affects their confidence. So it's meeting them where they're at.
Yes.
This has been great.
Absolutely. Same here.
Any last minute words you want to say to our listeners?
I would say that take all of this as a journey together, you are learning as the adults, you're walking with your children. Don't push, but just stop, observe, and celebrate what they can do. Don't start from where would you like your child to go. Next is, what can my child do right now? What does my child love doing right now?
That's why I love the bridge so much too, because what I see with kids that we work with, and this happens all the time when we see them at camp, is that when they realize they're actually on the bridge, it's amazing how they sit up higher and they seem more proud. Their body language becomes more relaxed because it's not so much, oh, if I don't speak, I'm a failure. It's, wow, I am on the bridge. Look where I'm at. And they understand the different settings. So that bridge is such a means of control and actually confidence boosting for kids, and they make their own bridges. I'm just really big with the bridge, Anna.
Absolutely. And I love the analogy. And I think that would be maybe for another time. I think that especially for older children from the age of 8 upward is to allow them, exactly what you said, to see themselves on the bridge. Because sometimes they are scared to see what they can do because they're scared that we're going to push them. But unless we have their parents undo what they've done, which is like, come on, you can do it, and just sit and watch, that would allow them, no matter how old they are, to really recognize this is me. And then you can build on that. That is fundamental. If you can do that, that's a big one.